Media fact checker. TT Line ferry price surcharge due to 80% fuel cost increase. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. TT Line introduced a 15% fuel surcharge on new Spirit of Tasmania ferry tickets effective immediately, tomorrow, as of the article's publication date. Fuel prices for TT Line increased by 80%, leading to projected $50 million in losses for the company. The surcharge applies only to new ticket purchases and does not affect existing bookings. TT Line chairman Ken Konofsky stated the surcharge is temporary and not intended to generate profit, but rather to partially recover costs. Freight customers already pay a fuel levy under existing contracts, which is standard practice across the transport industry. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian PM Albanese announces gambling advertising restrictions amid criticism and delayed response to Murphy report. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese announced new gambling advertising restrictions on April 4, 2026, during a National Press Club address. The reforms include capping TV gambling ads to a maximum of 3 per hour between 6 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. Gambling ads will be banned on radio during school pickup and drop-off times. Online gambling ads will be restricted to verified adults, over 18, with opt-out options. The reforms ban gambling ads in sports venues, on player uniforms, and celebrity athlete promotions. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report Albanese's reforms fall short of Murphy report recommendations, but The Guardian explicitly calls the response timid, while ABC describes it as underwhelming and tinkering around the edges. No direct contradiction, but varying degrees of criticism. News Kamau claims the reforms are the most significant that has ever been implemented, while ABC and Guardian emphasize they are underwhelming or not enough. ABC reports that Labour MPs were surprised by Albanese's lack of communication on gambling reform for nearly 3 years, but News Kamau does not mention this internal frustration. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's 2026 daylight saving time end and clock adjustments in April. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daylight saving time in Australia ends on Sunday, April 5, 2026, when clocks move back 1 hour to 2 a.m. local time, from 3 a.m., in participating states and territories. The states and territories observing daylight saving are New South Wales, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, the Australian Capital Territory, and Norfolk Island. Queensland, Western Australia, the Northern Territory, Christmas Island, and the Cocos, Keeling, Islands do not observe daylight saving time. Daylight saving time will return on Sunday, October 4, 2026, in participating regions. Residents in affected areas will gain an extra hour of sleep when clocks revert to standard time. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, Guardian, and Article 3, Guardian, do not specify the exact date of the 2026 daylight saving end, while Articles 2, 4, and 5 confirm it is April 5, 2026. No contradictions exist between sources regarding the specific date, states, or time of the clock change. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Climate change threatens extinction of superb fairy-wren within 30 to 40 years. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Researchers predict the superb fairy-wren species could go extinct between 2059 and 2062 due to climate change impacts, based on intermediate and very high greenhouse gas emission scenarios. The superb fairy-wren population at the Australian National Botanic Gardens experienced a 50% mortality rate in 1 year, 2024, the largest loss recorded in a single 12-month period. Another group of superb fairy-wrens, 8 kilometers away in the foothills of Mount Ainslie, recorded a 70% mortality rate over the winter of 2025. The study was published in the journal Nature and involved researchers from the Australian National University and James Cook University. The superb fairy-wren was voted Australia's favourite bird in 2013 and 2021 contests conducted by The Guardian and BirdLife Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the study was published after a 50% mortality rate in 2024, while The Guardian does not specify the exact year of the 50% mortality but mentions a 70% mortality rate in 2025 for another group. ABC attributes the study's lead to Australian National University Emeritus Professor Andrew Cockburn, while The Guardian attributes it to James Cook University ecologist Martijn van der Poel. ABC mentions the pied currawong's decline as a potential positive for the fairy-wren, while The Guardian does not reference this predator decline. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Travel expenses and affordability of Albania compared to other European destinations. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Albania is described as Europe's most affordable destination for summer travel by the author in both articles. The author visited Albania late last northern summer, 2023, when $1 equaled 55 cents and 54 Albanian lek, later updated to 60 cents and 57 lek. The author spent a total of €1,473, $2,601, over a week in Albania, including €325 for hire car, €21 for petrol, €11 for coffee, €290 for meals and drinks, and €19 for sites museums. The Tirana Marriott Hotel is centrally located within a football field in downtown Tirana, with rooms priced at €140 per night. Budget flights to Tirana are available from Wizz Air and Ryanair, with car rentals available at the airport from Avis, Hertz, and Sixt. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two articles as they are identical in content. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Affordable flight options to Europe in 2026 amid Middle East instability. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A business class return flight from Melbourne to London with Etihad in mid-April to early May costs $4,881, nearly $2,000 cheaper than Emirates Premium Economy for the same route and dates. Economy class fares from Melbourne to London start at $1,295 with Air China, mid-April to early May, and are comparable to 2025 prices. Sydney to Paris in early June, returning early July, costs $2,167 with Malaysia Airlines and $2,273 with Qantas. Melbourne to Rome in early September, returning late September, costs $2,599 with Qantas and $2,330 with Turkish Airlines. Return business class fares with Qantas, Singapore Airlines, Japan Airlines, ANA, or Turkish Airlines start at $12,000 for any time in the next 6 months. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's teen social media ban effectiveness and unintended consequences. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's under-16 social media ban took effect in January 2024, targeting platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. Over 5 million accounts have been deactivated since the ban's implementation, according to the Albanese government. The eSafety Commissioner's February 2024 report found that 70% of teens, over 2/3, remain on banned platforms. Facial age estimation technology has higher error rates for children near the 16-year age threshold, as noted by eSafety and experts. The Australian government has filed a defence in a High Court challenge from a digital rights group regarding the ban's validity. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the government expects eSafety to throw the book at non-compliant platforms but does not specify a timeline for fines, while Article 2 implies the government's enforcement approach was doomed to fail from the start. Article 1 reports that 5 million accounts have been deactivated as a success metric, while Article 2 frames this as a misleading statistic given the high number of teens still on platforms. Article 1 mentions the government diverted 10% of ad spend to gaming platforms, but Article 2 does not provide this specific percentage or detail the diversion strategy. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's potential gas supply shortfall and government threat to limit exports for winter 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Madeleine King, Resources Minister, issued a notice of intent under the Australian Domestic Gas Security Mechanism, ADGSM, on April 2024, targeting July-September 2024 for potential gas shortfalls. The ACCC forecasted a potential gas supply shortfall of 12 petajoules for Q3 2024, July or September, including a 10 petajoules shortfall in July alone. The government will consult gas producers for 30 days, until mid-May 2024, before deciding whether to invoke ADGSM export controls. The heads of agreement between government and gas sector expired at the start of 2024, with no new deal reached as of April 2024. Santos is under pressure as it purchases uncontracted domestic gas to fulfill its export contracts, with the notice of intent targeting its operations. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the notice does not place any limits on gas exports currently, while ABC frames it as a direct threat to producers and a formal step toward export controls. ABC reports the Prime Minister's department is exploring a new tax on gas and thermal coal exports ahead of the May budget, but Newscomau does not mention this tax proposal. Newscomau emphasises Australia's domestic market is well supplied with Australian gas, while ABC highlights the ACCC's forecast of a 12 PJ shortfall as a concrete risk without downplaying it. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Melbourne couple charged with slavery and abuse of Indonesian woman. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Chi Kit Max Chong and Angie Ye Ling Lau are facing trial in Victoria's County Court for slavery-related offences, both pleading not guilty. The alleged victim was a 61-year-old Indonesian woman who lived with the couple in their Point Cook, Melbourne home from January 2022 until she fled in October 2022. Mr. Chong is charged with intentionally possessing a slave and 3 counts of common assault. Ms. Lau is accused of assisting or encouraging the slavery offence. The woman was allegedly forced to cook, clean, massage Mr. Chong's legs, and sleep on the stairs or in the garage while her movements and communications were restricted. The woman presented to St. Vincent's Hospital in October 2022 with injuries including a swollen ear, laceration to the foot, leg swelling, and malnutrition indicators. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau states the woman was initially given a bedroom but later forced to sleep on the stairs or garage, while ABC does not specify the initial sleeping arrangements. Newscomau mentions the woman had to borrow money from her family and church to help Mr. Chong financially, but ABC does not include this detail. ABC reports Mr. Chong allegedly hit the woman with a vacuum cleaner, while Newscomau does not mention this specific punishment. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian drug trafficking syndicate arrested over alleged cocaine meth import via Bass Strait. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 9 men aged between 31 and 72 were arrested across Victoria and Sydney over alleged drug trafficking conspiracy. 8 arrests occurred in Victoria, Morwell, Glenroy, Cranbourne, Cranbourne West, Cranbourne South, Greenvale, and one in Sydney, St Clair. The investigation, named Operation Bruce Cremorne, involved Australian Federal Police, Victoria Police, Australian Border Force, and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. The operation lasted 10 months and began after a commercial trawler sank off Victoria's Port Albert in May 2023, raising suspicions about its crew's unusual movements. Police allege the syndicate attempted multiple times to rendezvous in Bass Strait with a mothership to receive tons of cocaine and methamphetamine. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions 7 men face life imprisonment, while the ABC does not specify the exact number of men facing life sentences. The Guardian states the syndicate was using trucking industry connections to move drugs between states, but the ABC does not mention this detail. The Guardian reports the alleged drug quantities as tons of cocaine and methamphetamine without specifying a lower bound, while the ABC specifies up to 3.5 tons of cocaine. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal judge dismisses most of Blake Lively's sexual harassment claims against Justin Baldoni in It Ends With Us case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Judge Lewis Lyman dismissed 10 of the 13 claims in Blake Lively's lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, including sexual harassment, conspiracy, and defamation. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. 3 claims remain: breach of contract, retaliation, and aiding and abetting in retaliation. Guardian, ABC, Guardian. Blake Lively was an independent contractor, not an employee, so her sexual harassment claims under Title VII were invalidated. ABC, Guardian. Judge Lyman ruled that Justin Baldoni's conduct was acting in the scene during filming of It Ends With Us, citing intimate scenes between characters. Guardian, ABC. The trial is scheduled for May 18, 2025. Guardian, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian, Article 1, states Baldoni's lawyer described the defendants as very good people who have not engaged in this sexual harassment as alleged, while Guardian, Article 3, does not include this exact phrasing from Baldoni's lawyer. ABC mentions Baldoni's comment "pretty hot" and his response "sorry, I missed the sexual harassment training," but Guardian articles do not reference this specific exchange. Guardian, Article 1, notes Baldoni's lawyer said the defendants were not afraid of the truth, while ABC does not mention this statement. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US allows Russian oil tanker to deliver fuel to Cuba amid US blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Russian-flagged tanker Anatoly Kolodkin is carrying approximately 650,000 to 730,000 barrels of Urals crude oil from Primorsk to Cuba's Matanzas port. The ship was last tracked just off the eastern tip of Cuba, as of Sunday, and expected to arrive by Tuesday local time. Cuba has faced no oil imports for 3 months, leading to severe gasoline rationing, power outages, and an energy crisis. The US has effectively blocked all oil shipments to Cuba since 2019, including cutting off Venezuelan oil supplies after arresting Nicolas Maduro on January 3. The Anatoly Kolodkin is sanctioned by the US, EU, and UK due to Russia's war in Ukraine. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports the tanker carries 650,000 barrels, while ABC states it carries 730,000 barrels. The Guardian attributes the tracking data to marine traffic and LSEG, while ABC does not specify the source for its barrel count. The Guardian mentions the US temporarily lifted sanctions on Russia to aid oil flow after Israeli strikes on Iran, which ABC does not reference. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Melbourne storm forward 2E Kamikamika hospitalised after suspected stroke. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2E Kamikamika suffered a suspected stroke on Monday morning during a medical episode. Kamikamika is a 31-year-old Fijian international and Melbourne Storm forward with 142 appearances since his 2017 NRL debut. He played 25 minutes in the Storm's 28-24 loss to North Queensland Cowboys on Saturday, the 20th of April, 2024. Kamikamika was discharged from Royal Melbourne Hospital to commence inpatient rehabilitation. ABC confirms this. The Storm are without Eli Katoa for the season due to brain surgery from head knocks in November 2023. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Kamikamika played in the loss to North Queensland Cowboys, while ABC initially misreports it as the Cowboys, later corrected to Cowboys in the same article but inconsistent phrasing. News Kamau mentions Xavier Coates is sidelined with an Achilles injury, but this detail is not confirmed in ABC or the other sources. News Kamau refers to the Storm's loss to North Queensland as a blow big lead scenario, while ABC does not mention this context. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US State Department directs embassies to counter foreign propaganda using Elon Musk's X platform and military psychological ops. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US State Department issued a cable signed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio on March 29 directing all American embassies and consulates worldwide to launch coordinated campaigns against foreign propaganda. The cable instructs embassies to work alongside the US military's Psychological Operations Unit, MISO, formerly PSYOP, to address disinformation. The cable endorses Elon Musk's X platform, formerly Twitter, and specifically its Community Notes feature as an innovative and crowdsourced tool to counter anti-American propaganda without compromising free speech or privacy. The US is targeting foreign disinformation campaigns from Iran, Russia, and China, which are described as coordinated efforts to undermine American interests abroad. The cable outlines 5 broad goals: countering hostile messaging, expanding access to information, exposing adversary behavior, elevating local pro-American voices, and promoting telling America's story. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 Guardian articles as they are nearly identical in content. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian political polling shows Labor's declining support amid fuel crisis and Iran war backlash. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese's Labor government primary vote dropped to 31% in Newspoll, down from 36% in November 2023 and 34.6% at the May 2023 election. One Nation's primary vote is at 26% in Newspoll and 29% in Redbridge poll, both sources. The Coalition's primary vote is at 21% in Newspoll and 17% in Redbridge poll, record low. 72% of voters disapprove of US military action against Iran, reported in both Newspoll sources. Anthony Albanese announced Australia will underwrite the purchase of additional fuel cargoes to address supply shortages. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states One Nation's primary vote slipped slightly to 26%, while Article 2 states it rose to 29% in Redbridge poll. Article 1 reports Labor's primary vote at 31%, down from 36%, while Article 2 reports Labor's primary vote unchanged at 32% in Redbridge poll. Article 1 claims Labor's primary vote is at its lowest since the election, 31%, but Article 2 does not explicitly state this as a new low beyond the 31% figure. This story was covered by news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Romanian nationals charged for targeting elderly shoppers in Queensland shopping centres with wallet theft scams. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 Romanian nationals, 2 men aged 49 and 42, 1 woman aged 29, were arrested in 8 Mile Plains on the 28th of March, 2024 for allegedly stealing from elderly victims at Queensland shopping centres. The trio allegedly targeted elderly people, aged 70 to 94, at ATMs or grocery payments in Kenmore, Chermside, Strathpeen, North Lakes, Buddina, Caloundra, and Laidley shopping centres. Victims were distracted by claims of dropped wallets, then had their cards stolen for fraudulent use. Police seized approximately $20,000 from a unit complex in 8 Mile Plains during the arrests. The 49-year-old man and 29-year-old woman were charged with multiple counts of fraud and stealing, 5 counts of fraud, 4 counts of stealing, and 2 counts of enter with intent for the 49-year-old, 8 counts of fraud and 4 counts of stealing for the 29-year-old, and refused bail. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the 49-year-old man was charged with 2 counts of enter with intent, but Newscomau does not mention this charge. ABC lists Strathpeen as a location where victims were targeted, but Newscomau does not explicitly mention it, though it lists 7 suburbs including Kenmore, Chermside, etc. ABC mentions the arrests occurred on Saturday without specifying the date, while Newscomau states the arrests were on the 28th of March, 2024. ABC only confirms court appearances on the 28th of March. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Rail Industrial Action disrupting train services in April 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. No trains operated between Darra and Rosewood, Ipswich Line, and Central and Cleveland on Wednesday, April 1st, due to industrial action. Queensland Rail warned commuters of disruptions on Wednesday, April 1st, and potential further disruptions on Thursday, April 2nd, due to industrial action. The Rail, Tram and Bus Union, RTBU, Queensland President Steph White stated train control members took low-impact industrial action from 12 a.m. on April 1st, targeting coal and mineral trains, not passenger services. Queensland Rail confirmed about 300 services were cancelled on Wednesday, April 1st, on the Ipswich and Cleveland lines due to the dispute. Negotiations between Queensland Rail and unions began in January 2024, covering approximately 5,600 rail workers under 6 enterprise agreements. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Queensland Rail had asked the union not to proceed with the industrial action, but this had been refused, while Newscomau implies the government escalated after unions refused partial duties. ABC reports Queensland Rail said members were not told not to attend work, but RTBU President Steph White claims members were ready to turn up but prevented by government directives. Newscomau claims hundreds of RTBU members walked off the job, while ABC describes the action as low impact with members at work at their desks. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Carlton AFL coach Michael Voss faces mounting pressure over repeated late-game collapses in 2026 season. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Voss is Carlton's head coach and has a contract extending to 2026. Carlton lost to Melbourne by 23 points on the 21st of April, 2026 after leading by 43 points, MCG, final quarter comeback. Carlton lost to North Melbourne by 10 points on the 18th of April, 2026 after leading by 21 points at the 14-minute mark of the final quarter, Docklands. Carlton has lost 9 times after leading at half-time since the start of the 2025 season, including 2026. Carlton's 2025 season finished with a record of 9 wins and 14 losses, placing 11th. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian claims Carlton's bulldozing football style is labour-intensive and difficult to maintain, while ABC and The Age do not explicitly critique this playstyle. The Guardian states Carlton has never recovered from the 2024 GWS loss after leading by 39 points in Q1, but ABC and The Age do not mention this specific loss. The Guardian implies Voss's energy focus is ineffective for sustained performance, while ABC and The Age focus on Voss's composure and refusal to engage in future speculation. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian politician Andrew Hastie criticises US-Iran war strategy and economic fallout impacts on Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andrew Hastie is a senior Liberal frontbencher and shadow minister for industry and sovereign capability. Hastie served as a Special Forces veteran and fought in the Middle East alongside American troops. Hastie stated on ABC's *Insiders*, February 2024, that the US-Iran war was a huge miscalculation by Donald Trump. Hastie criticized Trump for not consulting allies like Australia before the conflict, citing lack of lead time. Iran has continued attacking neighboring Gulf countries and blockading the Strait of Hormuz despite Trump's claims of victory. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau reports Hastie said Australia is heading towards $1 trillion worth of debt, but ABC does not mention this specific figure or debt claim. Newscomau states Trump declared victory over Iran, but Iran has continued attacks and dismissed peace talks, while ABC does not explicitly state Trump's victory claim. Newscomau highlights US media reports of thousands of troops in place for a possible ground offensive, but ABC does not reference this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US President Trump's criticism of NATO allies over Iran conflict and Australia's response under Albanese. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump threatened to withdraw the US from NATO after allies refused to support his military actions against Iran. Australia and the UK denied the US military access to their airspace and refused to commit naval assets to the conflict. Trump accused Australia of failing to offer military support, calling it a huge surprise given historical alignment. Anthony Albanese, Australian PM, avoided direct criticism of Trump's war conduct in a national address. The UK's Keir Starmer opposed the war but granted Trump some demands, including military access. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims Trump is absolutely considering withdrawing the US from NATO, while Article 2 does not explicitly state this withdrawal is imminent or confirmed. Article 1 describes Trump's ceasefire negotiations with Iran as possibly fictitious and implies no regime change occurred, while Article 2 does not question the authenticity of these negotiations. Article 1 frames Trump's criticism of Australia as petulant and chilling for Australia's future, whereas Article 2 calls Albanese's response to Trump right and starting to exercise Australia's agency. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Israel's parliament approves death penalty law for Palestinians convicted of lethal attacks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Israel's parliament passed a law making the death penalty by hanging the default punishment for Palestinians in the West Bank convicted of fatal attacks or nationalistic killings targeting Israelis, effective within 30 days, Guardian 2, ABC 3. The legislation applies only to future cases and does not retroactively affect Palestinians freed in recent ceasefire deals, Guardian 2, ABC 3. Itamar Ben-Gvir, Israel's far-right national security minister, was a key backer of the bill and wore a noose-shaped lapel pin during debates, Guardian 1, Guardian 2, ABC 3. The law removes judicial discretion, requiring a simple majority vote for death sentences in military courts, Guardian 2, Guardian 1 mentions no meaningful opposition. The EU, UN experts, and rights groups, Amnesty International, BT Salam, condemned the law as discriminatory, violating international law and the right to life, Guardian 1, Guardian 2, ABC 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian 1 describes Israeli prisons as torture camps with systemic abuse and starvation, while ABC 3 and Guardian 2 focus on the new death penalty law without emphasizing prison conditions as explicitly. Guardian 1 argues the law is part of a long-term process of Palestinian dehumanization, but Guardian 2 and ABC 3 frame it primarily as a recent political maneuver by far-right factions without deep historical context. Guardian 2 states the law permits executions within 90 days of sentencing, while ABC 3 states it must come into effect within 30 days, though both agree on the urgency. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian government expands classroom device ban to include smartwatches and headphones. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Premier Jacinta Allen announced sweeping new device bans in Victorian schools on Wednesday, making Victoria the first state to introduce such rules across all school sectors. Mobile phones, smartwatches with notifications recording internet functions, and personal audio devices like headphones will be banned in public, Catholic, and private schools in Victoria starting January 27, 2027. Mobile phones have been banned in Victorian public schools since 2020, with an independent evaluation showing improved student focus, socialisation, and reduced critical incidents involving devices. Education Minister Ben Carroll stated the phone ban in public schools was effective in reducing distractions, with learning, behaviour, socialisation, and focus improving. Exceptions will apply for students needing devices to monitor health conditions. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the policy will be enforced through the Victorian Registration and Qualifications Authority, but ABC does not mention this enforcement mechanism. ABC reports Parents Victoria's Gail McHardy advocates for student-led consultation in policy changes, while News Kamau and Thej do not mention this perspective. Thej quotes a student, Macbeth Gonzalvis, saying there was not much difference overall from the ban, contradicting broader claims of improved focus and socialisation from ministers and principals. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 13-year-old girl charged in Melbourne anti-Semitic crime spree involving stolen vehicles and assaults. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 13-year-old girl from the Bayside area was charged with 52 offences including reckless conduct endangering serious injury, multiple counts of theft, theft of motor vehicle, burglary, handling stolen goods, and threatening physical harm on grounds of a protected attribute, anti-Semitism. The girl allegedly drove a stolen black Hyundai sedan in Hampton, Riponlia, and Caulfield over multiple days last week, shouting anti-Semitic remarks and throwing eggs at pedestrians on the 25th of March. On the 28th of March, the Hyundai allegedly swerved towards Jewish families crossing Hotham Street and Glen Era Road in Riponlia, narrowly missing them. The stolen Hyundai was taken from a gym in Caulfield. A 45-year-old cyclist in Brighton was injured in a hit-and-run involving a stolen silver SUV on the 25th of March, where the vehicle's passenger door was allegedly opened to hit him before ramming the bike. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC mentioned the hit-and-run in Brighton occurred on Monday night, the 25th of March, but The Age does not specify the exact date beyond Monday evening. The Guardian and ABC described the stolen SUV as silver, while The Age does not specify the SUV's colour. The Guardian states the Volkswagen Golf was white and involved in a chase across multiple highways, but ABC does not mention the chase route details. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicole Didone's prison sentence for running One Taste's orgasmic meditation scheme. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicole Didone was sentenced to 9 years in federal prison for forced labor conspiracy in March 2024. Didone was ordered to forfeit $12 million and 7 victims received roughly $890,000 in restitution. One Taste's orgasmic meditation, OM, practice involved women lying unclothed in a nest while men stroked their clitoris for 15 minutes in a goalless meditation session. Didone sold One Taste for $12 million in 2017 before controversies emerged. Rachel Cherwitz, One Taste's former sales director, was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison for her role in the scheme. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 claims the clitoral stimulation in OM focuses on the upper left quadrant with a dense nerve bundle, but Article 1 also notes researchers only recently mapped the full clitoral nerves, implying this claim may be unverified. Article 1 describes the nest as an arrangement of pillows and blankets, while no other source elaborates on this specific detail, leaving ambiguity about its exact description. Article 2 states prosecutors argued Didone's scheme left scores of victims, but Article 1 does not specify an exact number of victims, only that former clients and teachers felt coerced. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian aid worker Zomi Francom's death in Israeli drone strike and ongoing investigation demands. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zomi Francom, 43, was killed in an Israeli Defense Forces (IDF) strike on April 1, 2024, alongside 6 other World Central Kitchen aid workers in Gaza. The IDF dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others over the strike, acknowledging a violation of rules of engagement. An Australian review by former Defence Chief Mark Binskin found a significant breakdown in situational awareness and serious failures in IDF procedures. Israel's military advocate general is conducting an investigation into the strike, which remains ongoing as of April 2026. The Francom family has not received a personal apology or compensation from Israel, nor full access to the unedited drone footage audio. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and The Guardian both report the IDF dismissed 2 officers and reprimanded 3 others, but ABC does not specify the number of officers reprimanded, only mentions 3 others without clarifying if this includes reprimands or other actions. The Guardian claims Israel's ambassador Hillel Newman said the investigation had not been shelved, but ABC's headline and text imply the family and some observers believe the case has stalled compared to other high-profile Israeli investigations. The Guardian reports Newman denied the number of journalists killed in Gaza, e.g., 200+, was accurate, while ABC and News.com.au do not address this claim and focus solely on the Francom case. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and News.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Angus Taylor's car theft and coalitions fuel excise demands amid political crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Angus Taylor's car was stolen on March 27 from an address in Canberra's inner south. The stolen car was located later that day in Turner, North Canberra, and taken to an ACT policing facility for forensic examination. The theft occurred just hours before Taylor was due to attend a joint coalition press conference at a petrol station with Matt Canavan and Bridget McKenzie. ACT policing confirmed the vehicle theft via a statement to reporters. Taylor's car was empty, no fuel, and left running into the red, likely limiting the thief's ability to travel far. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau does not mention the 3-degree temperature or the shirt appearance as a reason for Taylor's attire, while SMH explicitly notes this as a possible explanation. SMH reports Taylor's car was left running into the red and empty, but does not specify if this was confirmed by police or only inferred. Newscomau does not mention this detail. SMH includes a speculative claim that the thief likely did not travel far due to fuel prices, which is not a factual claim from police or Taylor's office. This story was covered by News.com.au and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kieran Trippier's departure from Newcastle United and related football news. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kieran Trippier will leave Newcastle United this summer when his contract expires. Trippier joined Newcastle from Atletico Madrid in January 2022 for £12 million. He made over 150 appearances for Newcastle, scoring 4 goals, and was part of the 2023 Carabao Cup winning team that beat Liverpool at Wembley. Trippier was Eddie Howe's first signing at Newcastle and helped lead the club to 2 Champions League qualifications. Trippier stated in a club statement that he has felt most at home at Newcastle and called the Carabao Cup win the best of my career. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two Guardian articles regarding Trippier's departure or key facts. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US Vice President J.D. Vance's comments on UFOs, UAPs, and his belief in extraterrestrial beings as demons. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. J.D. Vance appeared on the conservative podcast The Benny Show, released on Saturday, June 2024, discussing his obsession with UFOs and unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs. Vance stated he has not yet reviewed the UAP files that President Trump has promised to release, replying, "I actually haven't," when asked about them. Vance claimed he does not believe in aliens but instead considers them demons, referencing a Christian understanding of supernatural beings. The U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, registered the domains alien.gov and aliens.gov in May 2024, adding them to the official government website registry. Donald Trump announced on Truth Social that he instructed agencies to begin releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Vance's podcast was released on Saturday, while Article 2 does not specify the exact date but implies it was recent. Article 1 frames Vance's comments as serious and tied to broader political and religious discourse, while Article 2 presents them as satirical and rooted in personal discontent. Article 1 mentions Vance's notable silence about Donald Trump's war in the Middle East, but Article 2 does not reference this context. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. International coalition meeting to reopen Strait of Hormuz amid Iran blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A virtual meeting of 35 to 40 countries, including Australia, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Netherlands, Japan, Canada, South Korea, New Zealand, UAE, Nigeria, was held on the 29th of March, 2024 to discuss reopening the Strait of Hormuz, excluding the US. Foreign Minister Penny Wong represented Australia at the meeting, which was convened by UK Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper. The Strait of Hormuz carries 15 to 25% of the world's seaborne oil and gas supplies, with 1,000 to 2,000 ships and 20,000 seafarers currently stranded due to Iran's partial blockade. Australia has deployed an E-7 Wedgetail surveillance aircraft to the UAE, contributing to Gulf defense efforts. Donald Trump publicly stated that securing the Strait of Hormuz was not America's responsibility and urged allies to go get your own oil. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and News Corp Australia report Australia's SAS deployment, 90 personnel, but Guardian and News Corp Australia do not confirm numbers or deployment status. Guardian states Trump's ceasefire offer was denied by Iran, while ABC and News Corp Australia do not mention this specific denial. ABC and News Corp Australia mention Australia's E-7 Wedgetail as the only current military asset in the region, but Guardian implies Australia may contribute further assets post-meeting without specifying. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Victorian government ordered to pay $27.92 million compensation to landowner over disputed land acquisition for OMR. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jeffrey Barrett, a 70-year-old farmer from Manor Lakes, Wyndham Vale, was awarded $27,925,000 in compensation by Supreme Court Justice Claire Harris for land acquisition related to the Outer Metropolitan Ring Road (OMR) project. The Victorian government initially offered Barrett $0 for financial loss in 2021, later amended to $18,650,000 in 2025 after years of legal dispute. Barrett's claim was initially $31.31 million. The Age, or over $31 million, ABC, later scaled down to $28.27 million, The Age, or just over $28 million, ABC. The land acquisition was for the Outer Metropolitan Ring Road, a proposed 100-kilometre orbital freeway through Melbourne's west and north, part of a $31 billion project. The Supreme Court ruled the government's initial position of denying compensation liability was unreasonable, and Barrett's financial loss was a natural consequence of the land being reserved for public use. But not all outlets told the same story. The Age states Barrett scaled his claim down to $28.27 million, while ABC states he revised it to just over $28 million. The Age reports the government's amended offer was $18.65 million in 2025, but ABC specifies the offer included $18,650,000 for financial loss plus $75,000 for expenses. ABC's phrasing implies a separate expense claim. The Age notes the government's initial $0 offer was made after Barrett took the government to court in 2021, while ABC states the government made a formal $0 offer in response to Barrett's 2023 Supreme Court claim. This story was covered by ABC News and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply crisis and government response amid Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia currently holds 30 days of diesel, 39 days of petrol, and 30 days of jet fuel in reserve, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. Fuel shipments to Australia are secured through May 2024, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The federal government has passed legislation to underwrite future fuel shipments, covering price differences if importers sell fuel at a loss, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The government has cut the fuel excise by 26.3 cents per litre, ABC Article 1, ABC Article 2. The national average price of diesel is $3.23 per litre and unleaded petrol is $2.58 per litre, ABC Article 1. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the government has not publicly nominated a clear trigger point for fuel rationing, while Article 2 states the government has not publicly indicated a threshold for restricting petrol consumption but does not explicitly deny a trigger point exists. Article 1 reports that the government is working to avoid rationing and prefers voluntary measures, while Article 2 states the government is not considering rationing at this stage but does not explicitly deny the possibility of future consideration. Article 1 mentions that the government has secured fuel shipments through May, but Article 2 does not explicitly confirm the exact duration of secured shipments beyond May. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Zach Lomax's rugby union debut with Western Force against Queensland Reds at Lang Park. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Zach Lomax will make his Super Rugby Pacific debut this weekend, Saturday, for the Western Force against the Queensland Reds at Brisbane's Lang Park, kick-off at 7:35 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Lomax is named on the bench for the Western Force in their Round 8 clash against the Queensland Reds. Lomax scored 2 tries for NSW Blues in the 2025 State of Origin opener, 18-6 win over Queensland Maroons, at Lang Park. Lomax kicked 3 crucial goals in NSW's 2024 State of Origin decider win at Lang Park. Lomax's most recent match at Lang Park was in July 2024, where he scored 2 tries as the Parramatta Eels upset Brisbane Broncos, eventual NRL premiers. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Lomax was released by the Eels to join R360 at the end of last year, 2024, but Article 2 implies the release was more recent, 2025. Article 1 says the Storm and Eels settled their dispute at the start of March, while Article 2 does not mention the settlement timeline explicitly but repeats the same context. Article 1 quotes Simon Cron's confidence in Lomax's readiness, but Article 2 does not include this direct quote, only Fessler's perspective on Lomax's potential. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's National Film and Sound Archive's 2026 Sounds of Australia collection highlights. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jack Colson's 1991 arrest speech. Gentlemen, this is democracy manifest. What is the charge? Eating a meal? A succulent Chinese meal was added to the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection in 2026. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection includes 9 audio recordings added in 2026, including Jack Colson's speech, Missy Higgins' 2004 hit Scar, and the 2001 reading writing hotline jingle. The collection requires nominated recordings to be over a decade old and is voted on by a panel of NFSA sound experts. The NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection was established almost 2 decades ago, around 2007, and now houses over 300,000 audio items, with 1/3 classified as at risk. Marsha Hines' 1977 dance track "You" is the oldest addition to the 2026 Sounds of Australia list. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian implies the NFSA's Sounds of Australia collection was established around 2004 to 2006, while ABC explicitly states it was launched in 2007. The Guardian does not specify the exact location of Colson's arrest as Brisbane Fortitude Valley, while ABC clarifies it was in Fortitude Valley, Brisbane. The Guardian mentions a pedestrian crossing signal without naming the PB5 model, while ABC explicitly names the PB5 pedestrian crossing signal. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fuel crisis impacts Australian tourism and travel plans during Easter 2025. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rising fuel prices due to Middle East conflict are causing cancellations and operational disruptions across Australia's tourism sector ahead of Easter 2025. Southern Queensland tourism operators, e.g., Paradise Resort, Noosa Quadbike Tours, Drop Bear Adventures, report significant booking declines. Paradise Resort down 10%, Noosa Quadbike Tours down 60%, Drop Bear Adventures lost $10,000 to cancellations. Federal government announced a cut to the fuel excise in response to rising prices, welcomed by operators like Darren Smith, Coastal Cruises Mululaba, and others. Fuel prices on K'gari, Fraser Island, reached $4.25 per litre, among the highest in Queensland and Australia, per RACQ and ABC reports. Tourism Research Australia data shows overnight visitor spending fell $2.3 billion nationally in 2024 to 25, with Queensland, $379 million, NSW, $410 million, and Victoria, $1.2 billion, hardest hit. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states fuel prices on K'gari reached $4.25 per litre, highest in Queensland, while Article 2 does not specify K'gari's exact price but focuses on nationwide shortages. Article 1 reports some tourism sectors, e.g., North Stradbroke Island ferries, remain strong despite cancellations, but Article 2 does not mention this resilience. Article 1 cites RACQ's Dr. Ian Jeffries as stating fuel stockouts are highly unlikely, while Article 2 does not reference this specific quote or source. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. German TV star Colin Fernandez AI porn allegations against ex-husband Christian Ullman spark national debate on digital violence laws. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Colin Fernandez accused Christian Ullman of creating and distributing AI-generated deepfake pornographic images of her via fake social media accounts. Fernandez filed a legal complaint against Ullman in Spain in 2025, citing stronger legal protections for gender-based violence there. The couple separated in 2025 after living together in Mallorca, Spain, before moving back to Germany. Fernandez told Der Spiegel she discovered hundreds of fake pornographic images of her circulating online, later attributing them to Ullman. Germany's Justice Minister Stefanie Hubig announced plans to criminalize production distribution of non-consensual deepfake porn with up to 2 years in prison. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Ullman created deepfake images of Fernandez, while Article 2 clarifies Fernandez's lawyer argues the abuse was identity abuse, not AI deepfakes. Article 1 mentions Ullman's lawyer accusing Der Spiegel of spreading fake facts, while Article 2 quotes Ullman's lawyer explicitly denying deepfake creation. Article 1 notes the earlier investigation was suspended in June 2024, but Article 2 does not specify the exact month of suspension. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Massive Kit Kat chocolate shipment theft in Europe ahead of Easter. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A truck carrying 413,793 units of Nestlé's Kit Kat new chocolate range was stolen in Europe on the 26th of March, 2024 during transit between production and distribution locations. The stolen shipment weighed approximately 12 tons and was en route from a factory in central Italy to Poland. Nestlé confirmed the theft via a statement to AFP and The Guardian, stating the vehicle and contents remain unaccounted for. Investigations are ongoing in collaboration with local authorities and supply chain partners. The stolen Kit Kats could enter unofficial sales channels across European markets, with batch codes allowing traceability. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau does not mention the stolen Kit Kats were part of the Formula One line, while The Guardian explicitly states this. The Guardian cites The Athletic as the source for the F1 line detail, but Newscomau does not reference The Athletic at all. Any WSONews headline and statement do not specify the exact product line beyond new chocolate range, while The Guardian clarifies it as the F1 line. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. AFL player Tristan Xerri banned for wiping blood on opponent's face during match. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tristan Xerri was sent directly to the AFL tribunal for alleged serious misconduct after wiping blood on Essendon captain Andrew McGrath's face during a match on the 18th of May, 2025 at Docklands Stadium. Xerri pleaded guilty to serious misconduct at the tribunal and was suspended for 3 matches. The incident occurred after Xerri complained to an umpire about a blooded nose, then touched his nose and wiped his hand on McGrath's face during a North Melbourne vs Essendon game. AFL Chief Executive Andrew Dillon stated the incident was something we don't want to see and called for such behaviour to be stamped out. Tristan Xerri is a ruckman for North Melbourne Kangaroos, and the incident happened in the second quarter of the match. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, mentions an ongoing investigation into Lance Collard for a homophobic slur in a VFL match, but no other source references this investigation. Article 1, ABC, states Xerri could face a lengthy suspension and compares it to Buckley's one-match ban, while Article 3, ABC, and Article 4, Guardian, confirm the final suspension was 3 matches. Article 1, ABC, and Article 2, Thege, mention Xerri's incident as occurring after he gave away a 100-metre penalty for remonstrating with the umpire, but this detail is not repeated in Article 3 or 4. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Westpac CEO warns of Australian recession risks amid inflation and geopolitical pressures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Miller, CEO of Westpac, warned in interviews with ABC's Alan Kohler, March 2026, that there is a chance of a recession for Australia due to inflationary pressures and geopolitical tensions, specifically citing Middle East conflicts. Australia's inflation rose 3.7% in February 2026, down 0.1% from January, but remains above the Reserve Bank of Australia's, RBA, target band of 2 to 3%. The RBA has raised interest rates twice in 2026, as of March 2026, with the cash rate now at 4.1%, from 3.85% in February. Westpac's chief economist Lucy Ellis forecasted 3 more interest rate hikes by August 2026 in a note published on March 2026. Australians lost $2.18 billion to scams in 2025, with investment scams accounting for $837.7 million and payment redirection scams for $166.8 million, according to the Australian Competition and Consumer Commission, ACCC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the cash rate was raised to 4.1% after a 25 basis point hike in March 2026, but does not specify the exact timing of the second 2026 hike, while Newscomau explicitly states the RBA raised it from 3.85% to 4.10% in March 2026. ABC states the cash rate would return to 4.35% after one more hike, implying the current rate is below that, while Newscomau does not mention this specific target rate. ABC cites February 2026 inflation at 3.7%, down 0.1% from January, but Newscomau does not reference February's inflation data or the 0.1% decrease. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Western Australia faces severe mouse plague threatening agriculture and homes. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. CSIRO Research Officer Steve Henry is warning about unprecedented mouse plague levels in Western Australia's grain paddocks, ABC, Newscomau. Mouse numbers in WA are at plague proportions, with some paddocks reporting over 200 to 300 mice per hectare, ABC, and up to 400 to 800 burrows per hectare, Newscomau. Farmers in WA's Midwest, Wheatbelt, and Goldfields Esperance regions are reporting severe infestations affecting wheat, barley, canola, and other crops, Newscomau. Steve Henry visited WA in 2022 when mouse numbers were high, but this year's outbreak is significantly worse, ABC. Mice are breeding prolifically, with females producing 6 to 10 babies every 19 to 21 days and starting reproduction at 6 weeks old, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports mice numbers at 200 to 300 per hectare, while Newscomau states some paddocks have up to 8,000 mice per hectare, burrows counted. ABC does not mention federal approval delays for ZP50 bait, but Newscomau highlights this as a critical issue for farmers. ABC focuses on home infestations with specific examples, e.g., flour, milk containers, while Newscomau emphasizes crop damage without detailed household cases. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel supply crisis amid Middle East conflict and Easter demand surge. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's fuel reserves as of late March early April include 39 days worth of petrol, 29 days worth of diesel, and 30 days worth of jet fuel, Guardian, ABC, Newscomau. Energy Minister Chris Bowen reported 312 service stations across Australia were without diesel, out of 8000, with NSW hardest hit, Guardian, ABC. NSW had 150 to 182 service stations without diesel, Guardian, 150, ABC Newscomau, 182, down from previous days, Guardian, 182 on Thursday, ABC, 184 on Thursday. More than 50 fuel ships were en route to Australia to replenish supplies, Guardian, Newscomau. The federal government halved the fuel excise tax, reducing unleaded petrol prices to the low $2.20 litre in most capital cities, Guardian, Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian reports 150 NSW stations without diesel, down from 182, while ABC reports 182 stations without diesel, down from 184. Guardian states 48 NSW stations were completely out of fuel, no change from previous day, but ABC says 36 stations were out of fuel, down from 48. News Kamau claims 58 WA stations were without unleaded petrol, but this detail is absent from Guardian and ABC. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Criticism and controversy over Trump's proposed Miami Presidential Library and related political branding. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump's presidential library is proposed to be a 50-story, Article 1, or 47-story, Article 2, structure in Miami, Florida, with a giant golden statue of Trump in the lobby. The land for the library was controversially gifted to Eric Trump's foundation by Miami-Dade College in 2023, with a federal judge initially blocking the transfer due to lack of public notice, later overturned. The site is valued at over $67 million according to Article 2, and the land was transferred to the state of Florida before being given to Eric Trump's foundation. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed a law renaming Palm Beach International Airport to the President Donald J. Trump International Airport on the same day the library plans were unveiled. The library plans include a replica of Air Force One, gifted to Trump by Qatar, and a recreated Oval Office and White House ballroom. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the library will have 50 stories, while Article 2 claims it will have 47 stories. Article 1 does not mention Trump's statement that the project is likely to be a hotel, while Article 2 directly quotes Trump saying, "I don't believe in building libraries or museums. It's going to be most likely a hotel." Article 1 does not reference the Obama Presidential Center's budget escalating to $850 million or its alleged gentrification impacts, which Article 2 includes. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian study links vaping to lung and oral cancer risk. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A new review led by researchers from the University of New South Wales, UNSW, found nicotine-containing vapes are likely to cause lung and oral cancers, based on evidence from 2017 to 2025. The review analysed mouse studies, human biomarker studies, oxidative stress, epigenetic changes, inflammation, and case reports, including a 19-year-old man with oral cancer linked to vaping. Australia's federal government in 2024 restricted vape sales to pharmacies for smoking cessation or nicotine dependence management only. Black market vapes in Australia often contain nicotine despite misleading labels, according to Alexander Larcombe, Curtin University, and ABC's reporting. The review did not establish a definitive epidemiological link between vaping and cancer but identified biological markers, DNA damage, inflammation, associated with cancer risk. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reported Dr. Stewart said there is still no epidemiological link between vaping and cancer, while The Guardian framed the review as finding likely cancer risk without definitive numbers. The Guardian quoted Professor Stephen Duffy as saying vaping is not as harmful as smoking due to absence of combustion products, but ABC's Alexander Larcombe stated nothing inhaled into the lungs other than fresh air is likely to be completely okay. ABC emphasized Dr. Stewart's caution that vaping as a smoking cessation tool is not established as successful, while The Guardian's Freddie Seeters implied regulators should act despite inconclusive quit vaping evidence. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland's Easter weekend weather forecast and tropical cyclone risk during wet season transition. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Queensland is transitioning from wet season to drier winter conditions with longer spells of sunny weather and cooler temperatures. Far north Queensland, including Cairns to Cardwell, will experience heavier, more persistent rain throughout Easter weekend. Coastal areas between Gold Coast and north of Townsville will see brief, light showers with rainfall totals unlikely to exceed 20 mm over the 4-day Easter long weekend. Tropical low 37U near Solomon Islands has a moderate chance of intensifying into a cyclone from Saturday, increasing to high chance from Sunday. The Daintree River peaked at 4.85 m on Thursday and has been at minor flood levels this week. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states rainfall totals will stay low with brief spells of showers, while Article 2 describes widespread, scattered showers along the coast with localized falls of between 50 and 100 millimeters, maybe even locally more. Article 1 says rainfall totals are unlikely to go above 20 millimeters over the 4-day-long weekend, but Article 2 mentions parts of the north expecting rainfall in the triple digits. Article 1 does not mention tropical low 37U or a potential cyclone forming, while Article 2 highlights it as a key focus with a moderate to high chance of intensification. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney gym shooting, 3 men charged in daylight assault with firearms. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A shooting occurred outside a gym on Steer Road, Gregory Hills, Sydney's southwest at 8:30 a.m. on December 5, 2025. 2 masked men fired 12 shots at a 48-year-old man outside the gym. He escaped uninjured. The shooters fled in a red Range Rover SUV with cloned number plates, later found abandoned in bushland near Macquarie Grove Road, Cobbitty. Police recovered clothing, masks, cloned number plates, and 2 pistols from the bushland near the ditched car. A 40-year-old man was charged with shooting with intent to murder and knowingly directing a criminal group, arrested in Parramatta. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau does not mention the alleged target's name, Stephen Halliby, as reported by ABC. ABC specifies the 32-year-old was charged with contribute criminal activity, while Newscomau does not include this charge. Newscomau states the 38-year-old was arrested on Tuesday and set to face bail division court on Wednesday, but ABC does not specify the exact date for the 38-year-old's court appearance. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.